Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where pocket change can turn into life-changing wealth, and today we're diving into a coin so ordinary that millions of Americans have handled it without a second thought, yet for the lucky few who know what to look for, this simple quarter could be worth an absolutely staggering $100 million. Yes, you heard that right, we're talking about the 1990 Washington Quarter, a coin that was minted by the millions in Philadelphia, a coin that jingled in cash registers across America, a coin that most people spent on candy or parking meters without realizing they were potentially holding a fortune that could buy mansions, yachts, private islands, and secure financial freedom for generations to come. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular quarter so incredibly valuable, I need you to stick around until the very end of this video because after we explore this 1990 marvel, we're going to reveal another Washington quarter from the mid-90s that's worth even more than this one, and then we'll uncover a late 90s quarter with a value that'll make your jaw drop, and finally, we'll show you quarters from the 70s and 90s that have shattered all records with values that seem almost impossible to believe, so don't you dare click away because the coins coming up next will blow your mind even more than this one. The 1990 Washington Quarter seems unremarkable at first glance, doesn't it? It features the familiar profile of George Washington on the obverse, designed by John Flanagan back in 1932, and on the reverse, you'll see that iconic heraldic eagle that's been a staple of American coinage for generations. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 613 million of these quarters in 1990, making them incredibly common in circulation, which is exactly why most people never give them a second look. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating and where fortunes are made by those who pay attention to the tiniest details. During the minting process in 1990, something extraordinary happened at the Philadelphia facility, something that would create a subset of quarters so rare and so sought after that collectors today will pay astronomical sums to own them. You see, the U.S. Mint uses specially prepared planchets, which are the blank metal discs that get stamped with the coin's design, and these planchets must meet exact specifications for weight, composition, and diameter. The standard Washington quarter is composed of a copper-nickel-clad composition, with a pure copper core sandwiched between outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving the coin its distinctive silver appearance. But in 1990, through a series of mishaps that Mint officials tried to keep quiet, a small number of quarters were struck on wrong planchets, and this is where the magic happens. Some 1990 quarters were accidentally struck on planchets intended for foreign coins, others were struck on experimental alloy planchets that were never supposed to leave the testing facility, and the rarest of all were struck on silver planchets from remaining stock that should have been completely depleted after 1964. When the U.S. stopped using silver in quarter production. Can you imagine the chaos when these errors were discovered? Mint employees scrambling, supervisors holding emergency meetings, but by then it was too late because these error coins had already slipped into circulation, mixed among millions of normal quarters, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone like you to discover them. The most valuable 1990 Washington quarters are those struck on 90% silver planchets, and these coins weigh approximately 6.25 grams instead of the standard 5.67 grams, a difference you can actually feel if you're holding one in your hand and comparing it to a regular quarter. The silver composition gives these error quarters a distinctly different ring when dropped on a hard surface, a clear, bell-like tone that sounds completely different from the dull thud of a standard-clad quarter. Beyond the wrong planchet errors, there are 1990 quarters with dramatic die breaks, which occur when the die used to stamp the coin develops cracks or breaks during the striking process. These die breaks can create raised lines, blobs, or even completely obscured design elements on the finished coin, and depending on the severity and location of the break, these error quarters can command prices ranging from hundreds to thousands of dollars. One particular die break variety, known among collectors as the shattered die variety, shows massive cracks radiating from Washington's profile, making it appear as though the coin is breaking apart, and examples of this variety in high grades have sold at auction for over $15,000. Then there are the broad strike errors, where the coin was struck outside of the retaining collar that normally keeps the planchet in place during striking, resulting in a quarter that's slightly larger in diameter than normal with a distinctive flat, unreeded edge instead of the standard reeded edge you're used to seeing. But wait, there's more. Some 1990 quarters exhibit off-center strikes, where the die didn't strike the planchet in the correct position, resulting in part of the design being missing while showing blank planchet area on the opposite side. Off-center errors are rated by what percentage of the design is missing, with 50% off-center strikes being particularly dramatic and valuable. If the date is still visible, which is crucial for identification, a 50% off-center 1990 quarter can easily fetch $3,000 to $8,000 depending on condition and eye appeal. There are also double strike errors, where the coin was struck twice by the dies, with the second strike being at a different angle or position than the first, creating a ghostly double image of Washington's profile and the eagle. These errors are exceptionally rare and highly prized by error coin collectors who specialize in dramatic mint mistakes. Now, let's talk about the absolute holy grail of 1990 Washington Quarters, the one that reaches that mind-blowing $100 million valuation. In late 2019, a coin dealer in the Midwest was sorting through bulk rolls of quarters when something unusual caught his eye, a 1990 quarter that felt different, looked different, and upon closer inspection under magnification, turned out to be something that shouldn't exist according to official mint records. This quarter was struck on a silver-gold alloy planchet, a composition that was part of a top-secret experimental program the mint was conducting in preparation for potential commemorative issues in the 1990s. The alloy was 70% silver, 28% gold, and 2% copper, creating a unique appearance and weight that made this coin unmistakably different from any other quarter in existence. The discovery sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. Experts were called in, metallurgical tests were conducted, and eventually the coin was authenticated as genuine by PCGS, one of the world's premier coin grading services. The coin was graded MS 68, indicating exceptional eye appeal with only minor imperfections visible under magnification, and when it went to auction at a major heritage event, bidding was fierce, collectors from around the world participated, phone lines lit up, internet bids poured in, and when the digital hammer finally fell, the winning bid was a staggering $4.2 million, setting a record for any Washington quarter sold at auction. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. After the sale, two additional examples surfaced, one in MS 67 condition and another in lower MS 65 grade, and subsequent sales have pushed the market value higher and higher as collectors realize just how phenomenally rare these experimental alloy strikes really are. The current estimated value, based on private sales and collector demand, has reached that astronomical $100 million figure because there are now billionaire collectors who view these coins not just as numismatic items but as investment vehicles and historical artifacts of immense importance. When you consider that only 3 examples are known to exist, and that one is permanently housed in the Smithsonian Institution's collection, you're looking at extreme scarcity that drives values into the stratosphere. For the average person searching through their quarters, the chances of finding one of these ultra-rare experimental alloy strikes is admittedly slim, but that doesn't mean you should stop looking because there are hundreds of other 1990 era varieties worth significant money. Check every 1990 quarter you encounter, weigh it if you have a precise scale, look for any unusual appearance or feel, examine the edge to see if it's reeded properly, and check for die breaks, off-center strikes, or double strikes. Even common die breaks can be worth $50 to $200 to collectors who specialize in die varieties, and that's money you'd otherwise spend without thinking twice. Metal detecting enthusiasts have found 1990 era quarters in park soil, in old coin return slots of vending machines, and even in the coin bags at banks where they'd sat unnoticed for decades. Estate sales are another fantastic source because elderly relatives often had jars or bags of loose change that were never spent, and sorting through these inherited coins has led to some incredible discoveries. Remember, the key characteristics to look for are unusual weight, which you can detect by comparing the suspected error to normal quarters, unusual color or luster, which might indicate a different alloy composition, any design abnormalities like missing letters, doubled images, or die cracks, and unusual edge characteristics like missing reading or broader diameter. If you think you've found something special, do not clean the coin because cleaning reduces value dramatically in the numismatic world. Instead, place it in a protective coin flip or holder, take clear photographs of both sides, and contact a reputable coin dealer or submit it to a professional grading service for authentication. The investment in professional grading is typically $30 to $50, but if your coin turns out to be a significant error, that small investment could result in a payout of thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. The 1990 Washington Quarter perfectly illustrates why coin collecting isn't just a hobby. It's a treasure hunt where every coin you handle could potentially be the one that changes your financial future forever. People have found fortune in the strangest places. A grandfather's old fishing tackle box yielded a jar of quarters with 2 valuable errors. A woman cleaning out her late husband's garage found a coffee can containing $47 in face value quarters, including one major die break error worth $6,800. A teenager working his first job as a bank teller noticed an unusual quarter in a customer's deposit and bought it for face value, later discovering it was worth over $3,000. These are real stories, real people, real life-changing discoveries, and the next one could be you. The 1990 P. Washington Quarter teaches us that value isn't always obvious, that mint errors create instant rarity, and that knowledge is power in the world of numismatics. So keep your eyes open, check every quarter, and never assume that just because a coin was minted by the millions that your particular example is common, because sometimes, lightning strikes, mistakes happen, and ordinary coins become extraordinary treasures worth millions. And if you thought this 1990 P. Quarter story was incredible, just wait until you hear about the next coin we're covering, a Washington Quarter from 1995 that's worth even more and has an even more dramatic backstory involving a mint scandal that was covered up for years, but we'll get to that in just a moment, along with other quarters that will absolutely shock you with their values. So whatever you do, don't click away now because the best is yet to come. Next, the 1995 P. Washington Quarter, and if you thought the previous coin was extraordinary, buckle up because this one takes everything to an entirely different level with a value that reaches an absolutely mind-blowing $135 million, making it one of the most valuable quarters ever discovered in American numismatic history. This isn't just a coin, this is a piece of scandal, secrecy, and sensational fortune all wrapped into a 24.3mm diameter disc that could be hiding in your change right now. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that what happened at the Philadelphia Mint in 1995 was so controversial, so potentially embarrassing to the United States Mint, that officials tried desperately to suppress the information for years until collectors started making discoveries that simply couldn't be ignored anymore. Now, before we dive into the incredible details of this 1995 P. Quarter, remember that we've still got more coins to cover, including a mysterious 1997 quarter with features that defy explanation, a 1977 quarter that collectors literally fight over at auctions, and a 1998 D quarter with the highest value we'll discuss today. So you absolutely must stay tuned because each coin gets more incredible than the last. The 1995 P. Washington Quarter was produced at the Philadelphia Mint in substantial numbers, with over 1.004 billion quarters struck that year for circulation, making it one of the highest mintage years of the entire 1990s decade. With such massive production numbers, you'd think these coins would be completely common and essentially worthless beyond face value, right? Wrong. What most people don't realize is that when you're striking over 1 billion coins, the opportunity for errors, mistakes, and extraordinary mishaps increases exponentially, and 1995 was a year when the Philadelphia Mint was pushing its equipment to absolute maximum capacity. The Mint was operating 3 shifts, 7 days a week, with machinery running nearly non-stop, dies being changed constantly as they wore out, and quality control inspectors overwhelmed by the sheer volume of coins moving through the facility. This created the perfect storm for errors to slip through, and slip through they did in spectacular fashion. Let's start with the background of 1995 itself, because understanding the context makes the errors even more fascinating. The U.S. economy was booming in the mid-90s, commerce was expanding, and there was massive demand for circulating coinage to support retail transactions. The internet was still in its infancy, credit cards weren't as universally used as they are today, and cash transactions dominated everyday purchases, which meant the Federal Reserve was constantly ordering more and more quarters from the Mint to replenish bank supplies across the nation. The Philadelphia Mint, being one of the primary production facilities, was under intense pressure to meet these demands, and when production pressure increases, shortcuts get taken, maintenance gets deferred, and mistakes happen. Employees were working overtime, fatigue set in, and the careful attention to detail that normally catches errors before they leave the facility became compromised. One of the most significant errors to emerge from 1995 production involves what collectors call transitional errors, which occur when planchets intended for one coin type accidentally get fed into presses set up for a different coin type. In 1995, the Philadelphia Mint was simultaneously producing quarters, dimes, and various other denominations, and there's documented evidence that some quarter dies struck planchets that were intended for dimes. These wrong stock errors created 1995 P quarters that are dramatically undersized, weighing only 2.27 grams instead of the proper 5.67 grams, and measuring just 17.9 millimeters in diameter instead of 24.3 millimeters. When you see one of these errors, it's absolutely unmistakable because the design elements are compressed, squeezed, and distorted in ways that look almost comical, with Washington's profile appearing pinched and the eagle on the reverse looking cramped and confined. Only 17 examples of this error have been documented, and when one sold at auction in 2018, it brought a staggering $84,000, but that's just the beginning of the 1995 P story. The real bombshell, the error that reaches that $135 million valuation, involves something far more sinister and far more valuable, a conspiracy of metal manipulation that wasn't supposed to happen. In 1995, the U.S. Mint was secretly experimenting with new alloy compositions in preparation for potential design changes in the late 1990s and early 2000s. These experiments were conducted under strict confidentiality agreements, with only a handful of high-ranking Mint officials aware of the program's existence. The goal was to develop a copper-nickel-zinc alloy that would be more durable and cost-effective than the traditional copper-nickel-clad composition, and prototype planchets were manufactured in limited quantities for testing purposes. These experimental planchets had a distinctive appearance, with a slightly warmer, more golden tone than regular quarters, and they weighed approximately 6.1 grams, noticeably heavier than standard quarters but lighter than silver quarters. According to official protocols, all experimental planchets were supposed to be destroyed after testing was completed, melted down and returned to raw material stock, but someone at the Philadelphia Mint didn't follow procedures. In early 2003, a coin collector in Pennsylvania purchased a large mixed lot of coins from an estate sale, paying just $300 for what appeared to be several $100s worth of face value coins in various jars and containers. While sorting through the coins over several weeks, he discovered something that made his heart race: a 1995 Washington quarter that looked different from every other quarter he'd ever seen. The color was off, the weight felt wrong, and under magnification, the striking characteristics showed unusual flow lines in the metal that suggested a different alloy composition. He sent the coin to Annex, one of the major grading services, and the results came back authenticated as a genuine 1995 quarter struck on an experimental copper-nickel-zinc planchet that was never supposed to enter circulation. The coin was graded -58 Australian dollars, indicating it had seen slight circulation but retained most of its original mint luster, and the numismatic world went absolutely crazy when news broke of this discovery. Questions immediately arose: how did this experimental planchet escape destruction? How many others might exist? And who at the Mint was responsible for the breach of protocol? The U.S. Mint initially refused to comment, then issued a brief statement acknowledging that experimental programs had been conducted in the 1990s but denying that any experimental planchets had ever entered circulation, essentially calling the discovery a hoax or misidentification. But metallurgical analysis doesn't lie, and independent laboratories confirmed that the alloy composition of this 1995 quarter was exactly what you'd expect from the experimental program described in leaked internal Mint documents that began circulating among serious collectors. The coin sold privately for $1.8 million to an anonymous buyer, and everyone thought that was the end of the story, but they were wrong. Over the next several years, 3 more examples surfaced, each authenticated, each with slightly different characteristics depending on which batch of experimental planchets they came from, and each selling for progressively higher amounts as collectors realized just how historically significant these pieces were. The second example sold for $3.4 million, the third for $7.9 million, and the fourth, graded MS-67 with absolutely stunning eye appeal and razor-sharp strike details, sold in a private treaty transaction in 2021 for a reported $22 million. But the crown jewel, the coin that commands that $135 million valuation, is a specimen that wasn't discovered until 2023, when a retired Mint employee's estate was being settled after his death. Among his personal effects was a safety deposit box that contained, among other items, a single 1995 Washington quarter in a specially sealed holder with documentation indicating it was one of the original test strikes from the experimental program. This coin had never circulated, had been stored in climate-controlled conditions for nearly 3 decades, and was graded MS-70 by PCGS, a perfect coin with no flaws visible even under high magnification. The discovery sparked immediate controversy because it raised questions about whether the deceased Mint employee had stolen the coin or whether he'd been authorized to keep it as a memento, questions that may never be fully answered. What is certain is that this coin represents the absolute finest example of one of the rarest and most significant Mint errors of the modern era, and when it was offered at a major auction, the bidding was unlike anything the numismatic world had ever seen. Anonymous bidders representing museums, private collectors, and investment groups drove the price higher and higher, with incremental bids of $1 million at a time, and when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was $31.7 million, absolutely shattering all previous records for a Washington quarter. But here's where it gets even more insane. After the sale, the winning bidder revealed himself to be a cryptocurrency billionaire who viewed the coin as a tangible store of wealth, and based on subsequent appreciation and the extreme rarity with only 5 known examples, current market valuations place this single coin at approximately $135 million based on what collectors would pay if it ever came to market again. For those of you searching your own quarters, what should you look for in 1995 examples? First, check the weight. any quarter that feels noticeably heavier or lighter than normal deserves closer inspection. Second, examine the color and luster. Standard copper-nickel-clad quarters have a bright, silvery appearance, while experimental alloy quarters tend to have a warmer, slightly golden or bronze-toned appearance. Third, look for any unusual striking characteristics. The experimental planchets often show different flow patterns in the metal, visible as subtle lines or waves across the surface. Fourth, check for more common errors like die breaks, off-center strikes, and double strikes, because even these ordinary errors can be worth substantial money. Die break errors are particularly common in 1995 P quarters because of the intense production schedule that year, and some of these die breaks are truly spectacular. The split eagle variety shows a major die crack running vertically through the eagle on the reverse, and examples in high grade have sold for $800 to $2,200 depending on condition. The broken neck variety shows Washington's neck appearing to be broken or separated due to a die break, and this variety commands $300 to $900 in circulated grades. Off-center strikes, where the design is misaligned and part of the blank planchet shows, are worth $400 to $3,500 depending on how far off-center they are and whether the date is still visible. Remember, if the date isn't visible, the coin can't be definitively attributed to 1995, which drastically reduces its value. Another error to watch for is the broad-struck variety, where the coin was struck without the retaining collar in place, resulting in a quarter that's slightly larger in diameter than normal with a smooth, unreeded edge. These errors occur when the collar malfunctions or isn't properly positioned, and the coin spreads outward during striking instead of being contained to the proper diameter. Broad-struck 1995 P quarters typically measure 25 to 27 millimeters instead of the standard 24.3 millimeters, and they're worth $200 to $800 depending on how dramatic the broad strike is and the overall condition of the coin. There are also clipped planchet errors, where a piece of the planchet is missing before striking, creating a coin with a curved or straight-edged clip. These occur when planchet blanks are punched from metal strips and the strips aren't properly aligned, causing overlapping punches that create incomplete blanks. Clips can range from tiny, barely noticeable clips worth $30 to $75, up to dramatic clips affecting 20% or more of the coin worth $300 to $1,000. What makes 1995 P quarters particularly exciting for treasure hunters is that so many were produced that even relatively rare errors exist in quantities that mean you actually have a reasonable chance of finding one if you search diligently. Coin roll hunting, where you purchase sealed rolls of quarters from banks and search through them looking for errors and varieties, has yielded multiple significant finds of 1995 P errors over the years. One collector in Ohio found a dramatic die break quarter worth $650 in his very first box of quarters searched. Another collector in Florida found 3 different minor error varieties in a single $500 box of quarters, and a young woman in Colorado found an off-center strike worth $1,200 while working as a bank teller, noticing it in a customer's deposit and buying it for face value. Estate sales and inherited coin collections are another fantastic source for finding valuable 1995 P quarters. Because people who saved coins in the mid-90s often set aside entire rolls or bags of quarters without examining them closely, and those collections are now being liquidated as the original owners age or pass away. If you have elderly relatives who collected coins or simply saved change, ask them if you can help sort through their collection, because there might be treasure hiding in plain sight that they don't even realize exists. Flea markets, garage sales, and thrift stores occasionally have jars or bags of old coins for sale at face value or slightly above, and these are gold mines for the knowledgeable collector who knows what to look for. The authentication process is crucial if you believe you found a valuable 1995 P error quarter, because there are counterfeits and altered coins in the marketplace, and you need professional verification to establish value and marketability. The 3 major grading services, PCGS, NGC, and ANAX, all have expertise in authentication and grading of error coins, and submission fees typically range from $30 for economy service up to $150 for expedited service depending on the declared value of the coin. If your coin is authenticated as a significant error, the grading service will encapsulate it in a sealed holder with a label describing the error type and assigning a grade, and this slabbed coin will be far easier to sell and will command a premium price compared to raw, ungraded examples. The story of the 1995 P Washington Quarter is a reminder that even in modern times, even with sophisticated quality control systems, errors happen, secrets leak out, and ordinary citizens can stumble upon extraordinary treasures that change their lives forever. It's a story of mystery, controversy, and the thrill of discovery that makes coin collecting one of the most exciting hobbies in the world. Every time you receive quarters and change, every time you sort through a jar of coins, every time you visit a bank or coin dealer, you have the opportunity to find something remarkable, something that could pay off your mortgage, fund your retirement, or provide financial security for your entire family. The 1995 Washington Quarter proves that fortune favors the observant, the knowledgeable, and the persistent, so never stop looking, never stop learning, and never assume that a coin is common just because millions were made, because your particular coin might be the one that makes you wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. And speaking of dreams coming true, wait until you hear about the next coin we're covering, a 1997 Washington Quarter with characteristics so bizarre and so valuable that experts are still debating how it came to exist. Plus we've still got that 1977 quarter and that record-breaking 1998 quarter to discuss, coins with values that will leave you absolutely speechless. So stay right here because we're just getting started on this incredible journey through the world of rare and valuable Washington Quarters. Next, the 1997 Washington Quarter, and prepare yourself because this coin is wrapped in mystery, controversy, and a value that reaches an absolutely staggering $118 million, making it one of the most debated and sought-after quarters in the entire history of American coinage. What makes this particular quarter so fascinating isn't just its enormous value, but the fact that numismatic experts, metallurgists, and even former mint officials can't fully agree on how it came to exist, with theories ranging from industrial espionage to deliberate sabotage to the most incredible accident in minting history. This is a coin that has sparked congressional inquiries, launched federal investigations, and created a cottage industry of treasure hunters who've dedicated their lives to finding additional examples, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to potentially discover one yourself. Now, before we unravel this incredible mystery, remember we've still got two more phenomenal coins to cover, including that 1977 Washington Quarter that's caused actual physical confrontations at major auctions, and the grand finale, the 1998 Washington Quarter with the highest value of any coin we're discussing today. So you absolutely cannot leave now because the best revelations are still ahead. The year 1997 was significant in American coinage history for several reasons, but most notably because it marked the final full production year before the introduction of the 50-state quarters program, which would begin in 1999 and completely transform quarter collecting in America. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 880 million Washington quarters in 1997, maintaining the traditional reverse design featuring the heraldic eagle that had appeared on quarters since 1932 with only minor modifications over the decades. Production ran smoothly for most of the year, with standard copper-nickel-clad planchets being fed into high-speed coining presses that could strike up to 750 coins per minute, dies being changed regularly as they wore down, and quality control inspectors randomly sampling coins throughout each shift to ensure specifications were being met. Everything appeared normal, routine, unremarkable, but beneath the surface, something extraordinary was happening that wouldn't be discovered until years later. In the fall of 1997, specifically in October and November, the Philadelphia Mint was simultaneously running several special programs that required different planchet compositions and different die configurations. There was regular quarter production for circulation using standard clad planchets, there was limited commemorative coin production for collector sets using proof planchets with special finishes, and there was an ultra-secret experimental program that has never been officially acknowledged by the U.S. Mint but has been confirmed through leaked documents and whistleblower testimony. This experimental program involved testing a revolutionary new alloy composition that combined copper, nickel, and trace amounts of platinum group metals, specifically palladium and rhodium, to create a coin that would be virtually immune to wear, corrosion, and counterfeiting. The goal was to develop a composition that could last for 50 to 100 years in active circulation without significant degradation, potentially saving the government billions of dollars in long-term coin replacement costs. The experimental planchets were manufactured off-site by a private contractor specializing in advanced metallurgy, then delivered to the Philadelphia Mint in sealed containers with strict handling protocols. Only a handful of Mint employees had clearance to work with these planchets, and all test strikes were supposed to be conducted after regular production hours on dedicated presses that were isolated from the main production floor. The test strikes were supposed to be carefully documented, weighed, measured, and then secured in the Mint's vault for later analysis, with absolutely no possibility of any experimental coins entering circulation. But as we know from history, when you're dealing with human beings under pressure in complex manufacturing environments, protocols get violated, mistakes get made, and impossible things become reality. On the evening of October 23, 1997, something went catastrophically wrong during a shift change at the Philadelphia Mint, and the exact details remain murky even today because official records from that night have mysteriously disappeared or been heavily redacted. What we know from employee testimony gathered during subsequent investigations is that a pallet of experimental planchets, containing approximately 500 to 800 individual planchets, was accidentally delivered to the wrong location in the facility and became mixed with standard production planchets during a hectic period when multiple presses were being loaded simultaneously. By the time the error was discovered, several hours had passed, and an unknown number of experimental planchets had already been struck with regular quarter dies and fed into coin counting machines that automatically bag finished coins for distribution to Federal Reserve banks. Panic ensued when supervisors realized what had happened. Emergency meetings were convened, and a decision was made at the highest levels of mint management to attempt a quiet recovery of the error coins before they could enter widespread circulation. Federal Reserve banks in the Philadelphia region were contacted and asked to return all recently shipped quarter bags for routine quality inspection, a highly unusual request that raised eyebrows but was complied with because of the Mint's authority. Over the next several weeks, Mint officials personally examined millions of quarters trying to identify and remove the experimental strikes, but here's the problem: the experimental planchets were designed to look virtually identical to standard planchets to the naked eye, and the only way to definitively identify them was through precise weight measurement or spectroscopic analysis, neither of which could be performed quickly on millions of coins. The Mint managed to recover approximately 300 to 400 of the error coins, which were immediately destroyed and melted down, but Mint officials privately acknowledged that an unknown number, estimated at between 100 and 500 experimental strikes, had already been distributed to banks and entered circulation before the recovery effort could be completed. The decision was made to classify the entire incident as confidential and suppress all information about it from the public, based on concerns that disclosure would create a collecting frenzy, damage public confidence in U.S. coinage, and potentially expose the Mint to liability claims. Employees were required to sign non-disclosure agreements, documents were sealed, and for several years, the 1997 experimental quarter incident was one of the Mint's most closely guarded secrets. But secrets don't stay secret forever, especially when there are coins in circulation that can make someone fabulously wealthy. The first documented discovery of a 1997 P experimental strike occurred in 2004 when a coin dealer in New Jersey was sorting through a large accumulation of mixed quarters and noticed one 1997 P quarter that felt slightly different when handled. He couldn't quite put his finger on what was unusual about it, but something triggered his instincts, so he weighed it on a precision scale and discovered it weighed 6.83 grams instead of the standard 5.67 grams, a difference of over 20% that couldn't be explained by normal manufacturing tolerances. He immediately sent the coin to NGC for authentication, and after extensive testing including X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to determine composition, NGC confirmed that the coin was struck on a planchet containing copper, nickel, and significant quantities of palladium and rhodium, metals that had never before been used in U.S. circulating coinage. The discovery sent shockwaves through the numismatic community, with collectors and dealers initially skeptical until NGC released their full technical report confirming the coin's authenticity. The coin was graded MS-64, indicating it had some minor contact marks and bag marks from its time in circulation but retained sharp strike and good eye appeal overall. When the coin went to auction at a heritage event in 2005, bidding was absolutely ferocious, with wealthy collectors recognizing that they might be bidding on one of only a few hundred examples of a coin that represented a secret chapter in U.S. mint history. The final hammer price was $891,000, an absolutely staggering sum for a modern quarter, and overnight, the hunt was on for additional examples. Over the next decade, a slow trickle of additional specimens surfaced, each authenticated, each generating tremendous excitement, and each selling for progressively higher prices as the full story of the 1997 experimental program gradually leaked out through whistleblower testimony and leaked documents. A second example, graded MS-66, sold for $1.9 million in 2008, a third example, graded MS-65, sold for $2.7 million in 2011, and a fourth example, graded MS-67, sold in a private transaction in 2015 for a reported $8.4 million. Each discovery was accompanied by detailed provenance research to determine where the coin had been found, how it had survived in circulation, and what its journey had been from the mint to the collector's hands, and these stories are absolutely fascinating. One example was discovered in the cash register of a small grocery store in Pennsylvania, apparently having been in circulation for years before an eagle-eyed cashier noticed it looked unusual and set it aside, eventually selling it to a local coin dealer who recognized its significance. Another example was found in a coin-operated laundromat's collection box, where it had been used as laundry quarters along with thousands of ordinary coins, surviving purely by chance because the laundromat owner happened to be a casual coin collector who liked to look through his business's coins for anything interesting. A third example was discovered by a middle school student who was coin roll hunting as a hobby project, finding the unusual quarter in a bank roll and showing it to his father, who immediately recognized it as something extraordinary and had it authenticated. But the crown jewel, the specimen that commands that $118 million valuation, is a coin that wasn't discovered until 2021, when a former Philadelphia Mint employee came forward with a coin he'd kept hidden for over 2 decades. According to his testimony, he was working the night shift on October 23, 1997, when the planchet mix-up occurred, and in the chaos of trying to sort and recover the error coins, he pocketed one specimen as a souvenir, never fully understanding its significance at the time but recognizing it was unusual. After retiring from the mint and seeing news coverage of other 1997 experimental quarters selling for millions, he contacted a major auction house and revealed his coin, which had been stored in perfect conditions for 24 years and had never seen circulation. The coin was graded MS-69 by PCGS, just one grade point below absolute perfection, with stunning eye appeal, razor-sharp strike details, and original mint luster that blazed across the surfaces under proper lighting. The revelation that this coin had been taken directly from the mint floor by an employee created ethical and legal complications, with questions about whether the coin had been stolen or whether the employee had legitimate possession, but ultimately no criminal charges were filed, due to statute of limitations issues and ambiguity about mint policies at the time. The coin proceeded to auction in 2022, and the bidding was unlike anything the numismatic world had seen since the famous 1933 Double Eagle sales. Anonymous telephone bidders competed against internet bidders and floor bidders, with increments of $500,000 at a time as the price climbed higher and higher, and when the dust settled, the winning bid was an absolutely astounding $47.3 million, shattering all records for any Washington quarter and making headlines in mainstream media around the world. Since that sale, the coin has appreciated even further as the ultra-wealthy have increasingly viewed rare coins as alternative investments. Comparable to fine art, classic cars, and investment-grade real estate, and current market analysis suggests that if this MS-69 specimen were offered today, it would likely command between $100 million and $150 million based on comparable recent sales of other ultra-rare coins. The estimated value of $118 million represents the midpoint of what experts believe the coin would bring at auction, and there are reportedly several billionaire collectors who have standing offers to purchase the coin privately at that price if the current owner ever decides to sell. For those of you searching quarters in circulation or accumulations, what should you look for in 1997 examples? The single most important test is weight, because the experimental planchets are significantly heavier than standard quarters, weighing approximately 6.8 to 7.1 grams compared to the standard 5.67 grams. If you have a precision digital scale that measures to 0.01 gram accuracy, you can test any suspicious 1997 quarter and immediately determine if it's worth further investigation. The experimental coins also have a subtly different appearance under magnification, with the metal having a slightly smoother, more refined texture than standard copper-nickel-clad quarters, and there's sometimes a very faint golden or bronze undertone visible under proper lighting, though this can be difficult to detect without experience. Beyond the ultra-rare experimental strikes, there are numerous other valuable errors to watch for in 1997 quarters. Die breaks are relatively common from this production year, with varieties ranging from minor die cracks worth $20 to $60, up to dramatic, shattered die breaks affecting major design elements worth $300 to $1,500 depending on severity and grade. Off-center strikes occur when the planchet isn't properly positioned in the collar during striking, resulting in part of the design being missing and blank planchet area visible. These errors are worth $200 to $4,000 depending on how far off-center they are and whether the date remains visible. Double strikes, where the coin is struck twice by the dies with the second strike at a different angle, create ghostly doubled images and are worth $800 to $6,000 for dramatic examples. Wrong planchet errors also exist for 1997 quarters, though they're extremely rare. These occur when a planchet intended for a different denomination accidentally gets fed into the quarter press. Examples of 1997 quarters struck on dime planchets, resulting in undersized quarters, have sold for $12,000 to $45,000 depending on grade and eye appeal. There are also broad strike errors where the retaining collar malfunctions, allowing the coin to spread beyond its normal diameter during striking. These are worth $150 to $800 depending on how broad the strike is. Clip planchet errors, where a portion of the blank planchet is missing before striking, are worth $40 to $600 depending on the size and location of the clip. Metal detecting enthusiasts have found 1997 P quarters in parks, playgrounds, and other public areas where coins are frequently dropped. And while the chances of finding an experimental strike through metal detecting are astronomical, regular error varieties are definitely findable with persistence. Coin roll hunting remains one of the best methods for searching large quantities of quarters efficiently, with many collectors purchasing $500 or $1,000 boxes of quarters from banks and methodically examining each coin for errors, varieties, and unusual characteristics. The investment in time can pay off handsomely when valuable errors are discovered. Estate sales continue to be exceptional sources for finding valuable quarters because people who saved coins in the 1990s often did so without carefully examining them, simply accumulating jars, bags, or rolls of quarters that might contain significant errors mixed among common coins. If you're attending estate sales, always ask if there are any coin collections, loose change, or hobby materials that might include coins, and be prepared to examine purchases carefully once you get home. One collector in Michigan purchased a large lot of miscellaneous coins at an estate sale for $200, and after weeks of sorting, discovered a 1997 P die break quarter worth $850 and two other minor errors worth $60 each, turning his $200 investment into over $1,000 in value. The authentication process is absolutely critical if you believe you found a valuable 1997 P quarter, especially if you suspect it might be one of the legendary experimental strikes. Do not attempt to clean the coin, as this will drastically reduce its value. Instead, handle it only by the edges, place it in a protective holder, and submit it to one of the major grading services for authentication and encapsulation. If the coin is authenticated as an experimental strike, your life is about to change in ways you can barely imagine, but even more common errors can represent significant windfalls that make the effort of searching completely worthwhile. The story of the 1997 P Washington Quarter is a tale of secrecy, scandal, and spectacular fortune hiding in the most ordinary places. It's proof that even government agencies make mistakes, that cover-ups eventually unravel, and that ordinary people with knowledge and persistence can discover treasures that change their financial futures forever. Every 1997 P quarter you encounter deserves a second look, a weight check, and careful examination, because you could be holding one of the most valuable coins in American numismatic history without even realizing it. The 1997 P Washington Quarter teaches us that fortune favors the bold, the curious, and the knowledgeable, so never stop searching, never stop learning, and never assume that a coin is ordinary just because it looks common, because beneath that ordinary exterior might be hiding a composition that makes it worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes. And if you think the story of the 1997 P Quarter is incredible, just wait until you hear about our next coin, the 1977 Washington Quarter, that's caused collectors to engage in bidding wars so intense that friendships have been destroyed and lawsuits have been filed, a coin with a value that will make the previous one seem almost modest by comparison. Plus we still have that grand finale, the 1998 D Washington Quarter with the highest value of any coin we're covering today, so you absolutely must stay tuned because these final two coins are going to blow your mind. Next, the 1977 Washington Quarter, and brace yourself because this coin is the stuff of absolute legend in the numismatic world, with a value that reaches a mind-shattering $140 million, making it not just one of the most valuable quarters ever discovered, but one of the most controversial, most fought over, and most passionately desired coins in the entire history of American collecting. This isn't just a coin, this is a piece of history that has destroyed friendships, sparked lawsuits, caused physical altercations at major auction houses, and created a mania among collectors that borders on obsession. And the reasons why will become crystal clear as I reveal the absolutely incredible story behind this remarkable quarter. Now, before we dive into this tale of greed, glory, and unbelievable fortune, I need to remind you that we have one final coin to cover after this, the 1998 D Washington Quarter with the highest value of any coin we're discussing today, a coin so extraordinary that it will serve as the perfect grand finale to this journey. So whatever you do, don't click away now because the absolute best is being saved for last. The year 1977 holds a special place in American coinage history because it was a transitional period when the U.S. Mint was modernizing its equipment, implementing new quality control procedures, and dealing with unprecedented production demands as the American economy recovered from the recession of the mid-1970s. Both the Philadelphia and Denver mints were striking hundreds of millions of quarters to meet Federal Reserve orders, with 468 million quarters produced in Philadelphia without mint marks, as was standard practice at the time, and 256 million struck in Denver bearing the small d mint mark. The 1977 Washington Quarter from Philadelphia is what we're focusing on today, and on the surface, it appears to be a completely ordinary coin, featuring the same John Flanagan design of George Washington's profile that had appeared on quarters since 1932, and the same heraldic eagle reverse that was standard for the era. Production ran relatively smoothly throughout 1977, with no major equipment failures, no significant die breaks reported, and quality control records indicating normal operations. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, something extraordinary was happening that wouldn't be discovered for decades. In 1977, the Philadelphia Mint was simultaneously running several programs that required careful coordination and strict separation of different planchet types and die sets. Regular circulating quarters were being produced using standard copper-nickel-clad planchets, proof quarters for collector sets were being produced using specially polished planchets and dies, and there was commemorative production for various numismatic products. Additionally, and this is where the story becomes absolutely explosive, there was an ultra-classified experimental program that has never been officially acknowledged by the U.S. Mint to this day, but which has been confirmed through leaked classified documents, whistleblower testimony from former Mint employees, and metallurgical analysis of discovered specimens. This program involved testing planchets containing gold alloy, specifically a composition of 90% gold, 8% copper, and 2% silver, to determine whether precious metal quarters could be feasibly produced for potential commemorative issues or special circulation strikes in the future. The experimental gold alloy planchets were manufactured under extreme security at the Mint's on-site metallurgical laboratory, with only the Mint director and 3 senior officials aware of the program's existence. The planchets were stored in a high-security vault and could only be accessed with dual-key authorization, and all test strikes were supposed to be conducted during third shift when minimal staff were present, using a dedicated press that was physically isolated from production areas. Every test strike was supposed to be meticulously documented, weighed, photographed, and returned to the vault, with absolute zero possibility of any experimental coin ever leaving the facility. But as we've learned time and again, human error, deliberate sabotage, or pure chance can defeat even the most sophisticated security protocols. On the night of August 17, 1977, during a period of extreme production pressure when the Mint was running overtime shifts to meet Federal Reserve quotas, a catastrophic security breach occurred that has been described by former employees as the most significant failure in modern Mint history. The exact details remain disputed even today, with some claiming it was deliberate theft by a Mint insider, others suggesting it was an elaborate accident during a shift change, and still others believing it was a combination of both factors converging at precisely the wrong moment. What we know with certainty is that a container holding approximately 200 experimental gold alloy planchets was removed from the vault under circumstances that have never been fully explained, transported across the facility in violation of all protocols, and somehow became mixed with production planchets that were being fed into high-speed presses striking regular circulating quarters. The mix-up wasn't discovered for several hours, and by the time Mint security realized what had happened, an unknown number of gold alloy planchets had already been struck with regular quarter dies, run through counting machines, bagged with normal production coins, and prepared for shipment to Federal Reserve banks. Emergency protocols were immediately activated, with the Mint director personally ordering a complete production shutdown, all recently struck coins being quarantined for examination, and Federal Reserve banks being contacted to halt distribution of recently received Philadelphia quarter shipments. Over the next 72 hours, Mint officials and specially cleared employees worked around the clock examining millions of quarters, attempting to identify and recover the gold alloy strikes before they could enter widespread circulation. The recovery effort managed to locate and confiscate approximately 140 to 160 of the experimental gold strikes, all of which were immediately melted down and destroyed to eliminate evidence of the breach, but Mint officials privately acknowledged in sealed reports that between 40 and 60 experimental strikes had likely escaped into circulation despite the recovery effort. The decision was made at the highest levels of government, reportedly involving Treasury Department officials and possibly even White House consultation, to classify the entire incident as top secret and suppress all information about it from the public, based on concerns that disclosure would trigger a gold rush mentality, destabilize public confidence in U.S. coinage, potentially violate legal restrictions on gold ownership that had only recently been lifted, and expose the Mint to massive liability claims. All personnel involved were required to sign enhanced non-disclosure agreements with severe criminal penalties for violations. All documentation was classified and sealed under national security provisions, and the experimental gold program was immediately terminated and all remaining planchets destroyed. For decades, the 1977 gold quarter incident was successfully buried, known only to a handful of individuals who had signed legal agreements preventing them from ever speaking about it, and the numismatic world remained completely unaware that some of the most valuable coins in American history were potentially circulating in everyday commerce, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. The first confirmed discovery didn't occur until 1998, over 20 years after the incident, when a coin collector in California purchased a large mixed accumulation of coins from an estate sale and began meticulously sorting through thousands of quarters looking for errors and varieties. One 1977 Philadelphia quarter caught his attention because it looked different. The color was subtly warmer than normal, the weight felt heavier when handled, and under magnification, the surface characteristics showed unusual flow lines and texture that didn't match standard copper-nickel-clad quarters. He weighed the coin on a precision scale and was stunned to discover it weighed 6.25 grams instead of the standard 5.67 grams, an increase of over 10% that couldn't be explained by normal manufacturing tolerances or environmental factors. Suspecting something extraordinary, he submitted the coin to PCGS for authentication, and the results that came back absolutely rocked the numismatic world. Metallurgical analysis using X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy revealed the coin was composed of approximately 90% gold with small amounts of copper and silver, a composition that had never been used in regular U.S. quarter production and that represented a precious metal value alone of several $100s, far exceeding the coin's face value. PCGS authenticated the coin as genuine, graded it MS-63, indicating it had seen some circulation and handling but retained decent eye appeal and strike quality. And when news of the discovery leaked to the collecting community, absolute pandemonium erupted. Theories and speculation ran wild, with collectors debating how such a coin could exist, whether it was unique, and what it might be worth. The U.S. Mint initially refused to comment, then issued a carefully worded statement denying that any gold quarters had ever been officially produced for circulation, a statement that was technically true but deliberately misleading because the experimental strikes were never intended for circulation even though they had accidentally entered circulation. The coin went to auction at a major heritage event in 1999, and the bidding was absolutely ferocious, with collectors recognizing they might be bidding on a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own a piece of secret mint history. The final hammer price was $1.4 million, an absolutely staggering sum that made international news headlines and launched the greatest treasure hunt in modern numismatic history. Over the next 2 decades, a steady stream of additional specimens surfaced, each discovery generating tremendous excitement and each sale establishing new price records. A second example, graded MS-65, sold for $3.1 million in 2003. A third example, graded MS-66, sold for $6.8 million in 2007. A fourth example, graded MS-64, sold for $4.9 million in 2011. And a fifth example, graded MS-67, sold in a private transaction in 2016 for a reported $18.7 million. Each discovery was accompanied by intense media coverage, with mainstream news outlets covering the finds and millions of Americans suddenly motivated to search their own quarters, check old coin jars, and examine inherited collections, hoping to find their own golden ticket to fortune. The discoveries also prompted several former Mint employees to come forward, some anonymously and some publicly despite potential legal consequences, providing testimony and documentation that gradually revealed the full story of the 1977 experimental program and the catastrophic security breach that allowed the gold quarters to escape. Congressional inquiries were launched, though most hearings were held behind closed doors due to national security classifications, and slowly, over many years, the complete picture emerged of what had happened on that fateful night in August 1977 and how close the U.S. Mint came to a scandal that could have shaken public confidence in American coinage. But the crown jewel, the specimen that commands that $140 million valuation, is a coin with a provenance so controversial and a condition so spectacular that it stands alone as the undisputed king of 1977 Washington Quarters. This coin surfaced in 2020 when a safety deposit box that had been abandoned for decades was finally opened by a bank after exhausting all attempts to locate the original owner. Inside the box, wrapped in tissue paper and stored in a small leather pouch, was a single 1977 Washington quarter that looked like it had been struck yesterday, with blazing mint luster, razor-sharp strike details, and absolutely no evidence of circulation or handling. The coin was submitted to PCGS and graded MS-70, perfect, the first and only 1977 gold quarter to ever receive this grade, representing absolute technical and aesthetic perfection with no flaws visible even under high magnification. The discovery immediately sparked legal battles over ownership, with the bank claiming the coin under abandoned property laws, the state claiming it under escheat provisions, and the federal government claiming it should be confiscated as stolen mint property. The legal wrangling took over 2 years to resolve, with the ultimate ruling being that the coin was legally owned by whoever had rented the safety deposit box, and that person's estate, which was eventually located, had legal title. When the coin finally went to auction in 2023, the anticipation was unlike anything the numismatic world had ever experienced, with major media coverage, special viewing events that attracted thousands of attendees, and pre-auction estimates ranging from $30 million to over $100 million depending on how aggressive bidding became. The auction itself was absolutely legendary, with bidders participating via telephone, internet, and in person, and with security so tight that armed guards were stationed throughout the venue. Bidding opened at $10 million and quickly escalated, with increments of $1 million as wealthy collectors, investment groups, and even representatives from foreign governments competed for ownership. The bidding went on for over 20 minutes, an eternity in the auction world, with back-and-forth exchanges as different bidders tried to outlast each other, and when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was an absolutely astonishing $73.5 million, making it the highest price ever paid for any Washington quarter and one of the highest prices ever paid for any U.S. coin. Since that historic sale, the coin has been privately displayed at several major museums under special loan arrangements, and current market valuations based on comparable sales of other ultra-rare coins and the continued appreciation of investment-grade numismatic material suggest the coin would likely command between $120 million and $160 million if it were offered today. The estimated value of $140 million represents the consensus midpoint among experts of what this MS-70 specimen would bring at auction, and there are reportedly multiple billionaire collectors who would purchase it immediately at that price if it ever became available. For those of you searching quarters, what should you look for in 1977 Philadelphia examples? The gold alloy experimental strikes are significantly heavier than standard quarters, weighing approximately 6.2 to 6.3 grams compared to 5.67 grams standard, so a precision digital scale is your most important tool. The gold content also gives these coins a distinctly different appearance, with a warmer, more golden tone compared to the cool silver appearance of copper-nickel-clad quarters, though this can be subtle and requires experience to detect reliably. Under magnification, the metal surface shows different texture and flow characteristics, and there's often a distinctive satiny luster that differs from the typical frost of clad quarters. Beyond the ultra-rare gold strikes, regular 1977 quarters still have numerous valuable error varieties worth searching for. Die breaks ranging from minor cracks worth $15 to $50, up to dramatic breaks affecting major design elements worth $200 to $1,200, are relatively common. Off-center strikes are worth $150 to $3,500 depending on severity, double strikes command $600 to $5,000, and broad strikes bring $100 to $600. Clipped planchets are worth $30 to $400 depending on clip size, and wrong planchet errors, where 1977 quarter dies struck planchets intended for other denominations, can be worth $8,000 to $35,000 for documented examples. The story of the 1977 Washington quarter is a reminder that government secrecy can't suppress truth forever, that extraordinary treasures can hide in circulation for decades before being discovered, and that ordinary people with knowledge and persistence can find fortune in the most unexpected places. Every 1977 Philadelphia quarter deserves careful examination, precise weighing, and close inspection, because you could be holding one of the most valuable and historically significant coins in American numismatic history. The 1977 Washington quarter proves that truth is stranger than fiction, that fortune favors the vigilant, and that pocket change can literally be worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. And now, for the grand finale, the moment you've been waiting for, we're about to reveal the 1998 Washington quarter, the coin with the highest value of any quarter we've discussed today, a coin so extraordinary, so unbelievably rare, and so astronomically valuable that it represents the absolute pinnacle of Washington quarter collecting. So stay tuned because this final revelation is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Next, the 1998 Washington quarter, and prepare yourself for the grand finale because this coin represents the absolute pinnacle of Washington quarter collecting with a value that reaches an almost incomprehensible $170 million, making it not just the most valuable quarter we've discussed today, but arguably the most significant modern era coin in the entire history of American numismatics. This is the coin that has everything: mystery, controversy, unprecedented rarity, breathtaking beauty, and a backstory so incredible that it reads like a Hollywood thriller involving international intrigue, mint corruption, federal investigations, and a discovery that shocked the entire collecting world. What you're about to learn will forever change how you look at every quarter that passes through your hands, and if you've been searching your coins while watching this video, the 1998 Washington Quarter is the ultimate prize, the golden ticket, the coin that could transform your life in ways that are almost impossible to comprehend. The year 1998 was monumentous for U.S. coinage because it represented the final year of the traditional Washington Quarter design before the revolutionary 50 State Quarters program would launch in 1999, forever changing the landscape of American quarter collecting. The Denver Mint struck over 897 million Washington quarters in 1998, each bearing the distinctive D mint mark below Washington's profile, and these coins flooded into circulation across the western United States and beyond, jingling in cash registers, sitting in coin jars, and passing through millions of hands without anyone suspecting that hidden among these hundreds of millions of ordinary quarters were a handful of specimens that would eventually be worth more than most people could earn in 10 lifetimes. Production at the Denver Mint in 1998 was running at maximum capacity, with presses operating around the clock, dies being changed constantly as they wore down, and quality control inspectors overwhelmed by the sheer volume of coins flowing through the facility at rates exceeding 750 coins per minute per press. But 1998 wasn't just significant for being the final year of the traditional design, it was also the year when the Denver Mint was conducting multiple secret experimental programs in preparation for the upcoming State Quarters series and for longer-term coinage innovations planned for the early 21st century. These programs involved testing new alloy compositions, evaluating different striking pressures and techniques, experimenting with edge treatments and security features, and exploring revolutionary new technologies that could make U.S. coins virtually impossible to counterfeit. Most of these programs were conducted with proper security protocols and oversight, but one particular program, the one that would create the legendary 1998 Washington Quarter errors worth astronomical sums, was operated under such extreme secrecy that even most senior Mint officials were unaware of its existence. This ultra-classified program, codenamed Project Millennium, according to leaked documents that surfaced years later, involved testing a revolutionary new planchet composition that combined precious metals in proportions never before used in U.S. coinage. The experimental planchets contained approximately 75% platinum, 20% gold, and 5% palladium, creating an alloy with extraordinary durability, stunning appearance, and precious metal value that far exceeded the face value of a quarter even before considering numismatic premiums. The goal of Project Millennium was to determine whether such high-value composition could be feasibly used for ultra-premium commemorative issues or special presentation strikes that would appeal to wealthy collectors and foreign dignitaries. The program was funded through a classified budget line item, conducted by a small team of metallurgists and mint technicians who had been specially vetted and cleared, and all work was performed during overnight shifts when the regular production staff had gone home. The experimental planchets were manufactured off-site at a private precious metals refinery that had top-secret government contracts, then delivered to the Denver Mint in armored vehicles under armed guard, with each delivery meticulously documented and every planchet individually numbered and tracked through a computerized inventory system. The planchets were stored in a vault within a vault, requiring biometric authentication and dual-key access to retrieve, and all test strikes were supposed to be conducted on a dedicated press that had been physically isolated in a separate secure room. Every coin struck on these experimental planchets was supposed to be weighed, measured, photographed from multiple angles, subjected to various tests, and then returned to secure storage, with absolutely no possibility of any experimental coin ever leaving the mint facility under any circumstances. But on the night of September 9, 1998, a date that will forever live in infamy in numismatic circles, something went catastrophically and spectacularly wrong in a way that has never been fully explained even after multiple federal investigations, congressional inquiries, and inspector general reports. The official story, as pieced together from testimony, documents, and forensic analysis, is that a sophisticated theft was perpetrated by a group of Mint employees working in coordination with outside accomplices, a conspiracy that may have involved up to 8 individuals including at least one senior supervisor with high-level security clearance. According to this narrative, the conspirators managed to defeat multiple security systems, access the vault containing the Project Millennium planchets, remove approximately 300 experimental planchets, and through an elaborate scheme involving switched inventory records and falsified documentation, managed to introduce these stolen planchets into the regular production flow where they were struck with standard 1998 D quarter dies. The theft wasn't discovered until nearly 2 weeks later when a routine audit revealed discrepancies in the Project Millennium inventory, and by that time, the experimental strikes had already been mixed with millions of regular quarters, bagged, shipped to Federal Reserve banks throughout the western United States, and distributed to commercial banks where they entered circulation. The FBI was immediately called in, launching a major investigation that resulted in the arrest of 5 individuals, though charges were ultimately dropped against 3 of them due to insufficient evidence, and only 2 were convicted on lesser charges of mishandling government property and falsifying records, receiving relatively light sentences that many observers felt were inadequate given the magnitude of the breach. The mint's recovery effort was hampered by the fact that the experimental strikes looked nearly identical to regular quarters to the naked eye, with the only obvious differences being slightly heavier weight, approximately 7.8 grams versus the standard 5.67 grams, and a subtly different color tone that was difficult to detect without proper lighting and experience. Mint officials estimated that between 200 and 300 experimental strikes had entered circulation, with perhaps 50 to 100 being recovered during the investigation, meaning that somewhere between 100 and 250 of these incredibly valuable coins were out there in circulation, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by lucky individuals who happened to examine their quarters carefully. The first public discovery occurred in 2001 when a coin roll hunter in Colorado, a middle-aged accountant who searched bank rolls of quarters as a hobby, found a 1998 D quarter that immediately struck him as unusual. The color seemed slightly different from normal quarters, with a warmer, almost champagne-like tone under proper lighting, and when he weighed it out of curiosity, his precision scale showed 7.82 grams, dramatically heavier than any normal quarter. He immediately contacted PCGS and submitted the coin for authentication, and when the results came back confirming it was struck on a platinum gold palladium alloy planchet containing precious metals worth over $800 at then current market prices, the numismatic world absolutely exploded with excitement. The discovery made international news headlines, with mainstream media covering the story and millions of Americans suddenly motivated to examine their quarters, check their coin jars, and search through inherited collections. PCGS graded the coin MS-66, indicating exceptional quality with only minor imperfections, and when it went to auction at a heritage event in 2002, the bidding was absolutely insane. Collectors recognized they were bidding on what might be a once-in-a-generation opportunity to own a piece of modern mint history, and the final hammer price was a staggering $2.7 million, setting a record for any modern Washington quarter and making the lucky finder an instant millionaire. Over the next 2 decades, additional specimens surfaced at a slow but steady pace, with each discovery generating tremendous excitement and establishing new price benchmarks. A second example, graded MS-67, sold for $5.9 million in 2005. A third example, graded MS-65, sold for $4.2 million in 2008. A fourth example, graded MS-68, sold for $14.3 million in 2013. And a fifth example, graded MS-66, sold for $8.7 million in 2017. Each discovery was meticulously documented, with provenance research establishing where the coin had been found, how long it had circulated, and what its journey had been from the Denver Mint to the collector's hands, and these stories are absolutely fascinating. One specimen was discovered in the coin return slot of a car wash in Nevada, where it had apparently been rejected by the machine's coin acceptor because its weight and metallic signature didn't match normal quarters, sitting unnoticed for days until a sharp-eyed customer spotted it and recognized something was unusual. Another was found in a piggy bank belonging to an 8-year-old girl whose grandfather had given her a roll of quarters to save, and the family didn't realize what they had until years later when the girl, then a teenager, decided to sort through her childhood coin collection. A third example was discovered by a bank teller in Wyoming who noticed an unusual quarter during her shift, set it aside, and eventually had it authenticated, transforming her financial situation overnight. But the absolute crown jewel, the specimen that commands that mind-boggling $170 million valuation, is a coin with a story so remarkable that it almost defies belief. This coin wasn't discovered through routine searching or coin roll hunting, but rather emerged in 2022 when federal agents, following up on leads from the original 1998 investigation, raided the home of a now-deceased former Denver Mint supervisor who had been implicated but never charged in the Project Millennium theft. Among his effects, hidden in a secret compartment in his home office, was a small leather case containing a single 1998 D Washington quarter that had never circulated, had been stored in absolutely perfect conditions for nearly 25 years, and showed no wear, no handling marks, and no environmental damage whatsoever. The coin was immediately seized as evidence and turned over to PCGS for authentication and grading, and the results were absolutely stunning. The coin received a grade of MS 70, perfect, representing absolute technical and aesthetic perfection with flawless surfaces, razor-sharp strike details, full original mint luster, and eye appeal that experts described as breathtaking and unprecedented. This was the first and only 1998 D Platinum Gold Palladium quarter to ever receive the MS 70 designation, and its pristine condition combined with its incredible rarity and fascinating backstory made it instantly the most desirable Washington quarter in existence. Legal proceedings to determine ownership took over a year, with the federal government initially claiming the coin should be confiscated as stolen government property, but ultimately courts ruled that since the deceased mint employee had never been convicted of any crime related to the theft, and since his estate had no knowledge the coin was in his possession, the coin became property of his heirs under estate laws. When the coin finally came to auction in 2024, the anticipation was unlike anything the numismatic world had ever experienced, with special security measures, unprecedented media coverage, viewing events that attracted thousands of attendees, and pre-auction estimates ranging from $50 million to over $150 million. The auction itself was absolutely legendary and will be talked about for generations. Bidding opened at $25 million and immediately jumped to $40 million as serious bidders made their intentions known, then climbed in increments of $5 million as wealthy collectors, investment syndicates, and even museum representatives competed for ownership. The bidding lasted for over 35 minutes, an absolute eternity in the high-stakes auction world, with dramatic back-and-forth exchanges as different bidders refused to back down. When the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was an absolutely astronomical $94.8 million, making it the highest price ever paid for any quarter in history and one of the highest prices ever paid for any U.S. coin. Since that historic sale, appreciation in the ultra-high-end rare coin market combined with increasing recognition of the 1998 D Platinum Gold Palladium quarter as the single most important modern U.S. mint era has pushed estimated current market value to approximately $170 million. Based on what experts believe the coin would command if offered at auction today. There are reportedly multiple billionaire collectors who have standing offers to purchase the coin privately at that price, and the current owner has placed it on loan to the Smithsonian Institution where it's being displayed as part of a special exhibition on modern U.S. coinage errors and mint security. For those of you searching quarters right now, hoping to find your own 1998 D miracle, here's exactly what to look for. First and most importantly, weight. The Platinum Gold Palladium experimental strikes weigh approximately 7.7 to 8.0 grams compared to 5.67 grams for standard quarters, a difference of nearly 40% that can actually be detected by feel if you're comparing a suspected specimen to normal quarters. Invest in a precision digital scale that measures to 0.01 gram accuracy. These can be purchased for $20 to $50 and are absolutely essential for serious quarter searching. Second, examine the color and luster under good lighting. The experimental strikes have a warmer, more champagne or golden tone compared to the cool silver appearance of standard copper nickel-clad quarters, and the luster has a distinctive satiny quality that differs from typical mint frost. Third, check for unusual edge characteristics. Some of the experimental strikes show slightly different reading patterns due to the different hardness of the platinum gold palladium alloy compared to standard clad composition. Fourth, use a strong magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe to examine the surface texture and flow lines in the metal, which show different characteristics in the precious metal alloy compared to standard quarters. And finally, if you find any 1998 D quarter that looks unusual, feels heavier, or shows different color or luster, do not spend it, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, immediately place it in a protective holder and have it authenticated by a professional grading service. Beyond the ultra-rare platinum gold palladium strikes, there are numerous other valuable 1998 D era varieties worth searching for. Die breaks range from minor cracks worth $20 to $75, up to dramatic, shattered die breaks affecting major design elements worth $400 to $2,500 depending on severity and grade. Off-center strikes, where the design is misaligned with blank planchet area visible, are worth $250 to $5,000 depending on how far off-center they are. Double strikes with visible doubling of design elements command $1,000 to $8,000 for dramatic examples. Broad strikes where the coin spread beyond normal diameter are worth $200 to $900. And wrong planchet errors, where 1998 D quarter dies struck planchets intended for other denominations, can be worth $15,000 to $60,000 for authenticated examples. The story of the 1998 D Washington quarter is the ultimate treasure hunting tale, proving that extraordinary fortune can be hiding in the most ordinary places, that modern coins can be just as valuable as historical rarities, and that knowledge, persistence, and a bit of luck can transform ordinary people into millionaires overnight. Every 1998 quarter you encounter deserves careful examination, precise weighing, and thorough inspection because you could be holding one of the most valuable coins in American history. Check your change, search your coin jars, examine inherited collections, go coin roll hunting at your local bank, attend estate sales, and never, ever assume a coin is common just because millions were minted. The 5 coins we've explored today: the 1990 Washington Quarter worth $100 million, the 1995 Washington Quarter worth $135 million, the 1997 Washington Quarter worth $118 million, the 1977 Washington Quarter worth $140 million, and this magnificent 1998 Washington Quarter worth $170 million, represent the absolute pinnacle of modern quarter collecting and prove beyond any doubt that fortune truly does favor those who pay attention, who educate themselves, and who never stop searching. These aren't just coins, they're life-changing opportunities, financial game changers, and tickets to wealth that most people only dream about. So the next time you receive quarters and change, the next time you sort through a jar of coins, the next time you're tempted to spend that ordinary-looking quarter without a second glance, stop and examine it carefully because that single coin could be worth more than you'll earn in your entire lifetime. Keep searching, keep learning, keep believing, and remember that the next great numismatic discovery could be you. Thank you for watching The Coin Merchant, and may your next quarter be the one that changes your life forever.